Now we're going to move into using image capture to scan our negatives as negatives and scanning what is called a flat scan. So we're going to open image capture. You have to make sure that whenever you open a scanning software that you're not using another scanning software at the same time. So just make sure one of them is open. So what we're going to do now is we're just going to extend our window out a little bit, and we're going to make it a little bit bigger. So one interesting thing about image capture is that once you open the software, it's going to automatically create a preview of whatever's on the scanning flatbed. So today we're going to be using transparency positive, and we're going to be using the color slide option. Resolution is going to be 1600. And then we are going to scan, let's scan directly to the desktop. We will change the name to today's date. And I'm just going to add a little signifier that says we are in image capture. And we're going to make it a TIFF. We can turn the unsharp mask to middle, just like we had in Epson scan. And we're going to leave everything else the same, but we still want to make a marquee for everything. So we're going to just go ahead and make a little marquee, and we are going to hit scan. This method is a little bit more time consuming and a little bit more tedious, but to me it produces a better file, and you are doing all the work yourself and learning about color correction along the way. So our scan is done, and while that's happening, I'm just going to scan the black and white image. So we're going to open our file in Photoshop, and here's our negative. So one thing that we want to do, if you're going to be scanning from a negative to a negative, we want to make sure we adjust our profile first. And Adobe RGB 1998. Leave these how they are. So now we've got our image. It's still a negative, but now we have Adobe RGB 1998. What I like to do is I will make a copy of this layer that we have here by clicking Command J. Once I hit Command J, I will unlock, click Command, select both layers, go down to Group. I will open this back up, click on layer 1, and I will invert that by clicking Command I. And there is our positive now. I like to have two layers, one that's the original that's untouched, and it's there just in case we need to revert back to it. Collapse this folder again, and we will go into adjustments. And from here, depending on which view you're in, this is the classic view right now. If you're in the modern view, it'll tell you everything that's here. If you're in classic view, you can just hover over things and it'll tell you what it is. I'm going to go to levels. Once you're in levels, then you can go into each of the color channels here and make an adjustment. So I'm going to go to red, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold Option on my keyboard and click and slide this over until I start to see some specks come in. If you start to see any dark specks come in once you're pulling in from the shadow side, you pull out until you don't see them anymore. And then we're going to do the same thing for the other side. So you hold Option, click on the highlights pin, and move it downwards until you start to see bright red specks come into the image. And we want to pull out, and it's just in your image area, not that border on the outside, okay? We're going to do the same thing for each channel. And we have a pretty good exposure so far. What we can do now is we can go into adjustments, and we will open up another curves layer, and then we can click on this middle sample and image to set gray point dropper, and you could click something that's neutral, and then that way we get a pretty good color rendering from just that. We can go in and adjust color a lot more after that. You can also just keep clicking this dropper until you find something that's neutral and you like the way it looks. I think that's a pretty good representation of what it looked like that day. So It's a few more steps doing this, but it does a pretty good job of making your colors what we want it to be. So this scanner is a little bit soft, and that happens pretty frequently, so you might need to add a little bit of a sharpness adjustment to the layer, but that's up to you. I think it's pretty good for what it is, and it's pretty quick. So I think now we can open up our black and white image, and we'll do the same thing. So we'll open that. We've got this profile here, but we want to change it. So we go and change it. And we want to rotate our image as well. Same method, Command J. The only thing different for this black and white image is that we want to make sure that our image is neutral before we start messing with it. So we're going to go to black and white, and then we are going to go to levels. We don't go into the channels because it's just black and white. So we're just going to adjust it here. So we're going to hold Option, and we're going to move this up until we start to get some white to pop up in our image area. And then same thing for the shadows. And then you can adjust this midpoint to wherever you need. And I think that's a pretty good exposure, and we're looking pretty good. All right. So if we want to compare, we can open our other image back up in Photoshop. And we can rotate. So if we look at both of these, we can see that this one is a lot brighter. It's a lot more contrasty, and this is no adjustments, straight in from Epson Scan 2. This one is a lot less contrasty. The shadows are they're about the same. There's a little bit of information in the shadows. In this dark area back here, there's not any information at all, so we're pretty okay with that. For me, this one is a little too contrasty, and this one looks a little bit better. If you want to add contrast, you can add contrast from here. So you can do that however way you want. These are two of the methods that I would use to scan negatives on the Epson Expression 13000 XL. Once you make all your edits, you want to make sure that you save your file and save as a Photoshop file or a PSD file. Once you've done that, then you've successfully scanned some negatives. So congratulations.